Plato's allegory of the cave is sometimes referred to as just the allegory of the cave or the analogy of the cave or even just Plato's cave. But at any rate, Plato gives it to us in his work called The Republic, and in it he has Socrates talking with Glaucon and asking him to imagine a cave underground where there are prisoners that have been chained up so they can't move their heads in any direction. They can't move. They have to look forward, and all they can see are shadows cast on a wall. And this is all they've ever known all their life. And the origin of these shadows is that above them there is a walkway or roadway, as it were, where puppet showmen perform. And they hold up these puppets, and the fire behind them casts shadows on the wall for the prisoners. And this is all they've ever known all their life, right? So, you have to suspend disbelief for the sake of the allegory. Well, they look at these shadows on the wall, and for them, since it's all they've ever known, that's reality. Those things are real, very real, and it's the only reality they've ever known. Then Socrates says, one day, one of the prisoners breaks free and makes the long trek up toward the sunlight, real sunlight, the ascent to the sunlight. And once he gets up and out of the cave, of course, it takes a while for his eyes to adjust, and he's just stumbling around. He can't see anything until finally his eyes do adjust, and he realizes that what he's seeing are the real representations of what were only shadows down in the cave. He sees a real tree and a real dog and a real apple and so on and so forth. And he says, "Oh my word, the world that I thought was reality down in the cave is a mere shadow of the reality that I now see once I'm in the full light of day." So, of course, he's compelled to go back down and tell his fellow prisoners down in the cave that the reality that they are perceiving is, in fact, not a reality and that it isn't real. So he goes back down into the cave, and of course, now his eyes can't have to adjust to the darkness, and he's stumbling around saying, "This isn't real, this isn't real." And he seems like a madman who's lost his sensibilities because he went out of the cave. And he scares the prisoners, and the prisoners rise up in the allegory, and they kill the guy who got out. Well, this as it doesn't take a genius to to discern. This, of course, Plato is saying is not just an analogy of the cave, but it represents what happened to Socrates himself. He tried to point out to people that the world that they perceive with their five senses is less real, as it were, than the things that they are representations of. So when the philosopher who ascends to the light and becomes enlightened, as it were, when he sees a tree, he understands that it's a tree because, according to Plato, it participates in the form of tree, of treeness, which is the true reality, according to Plato. The tree is like a shadow that was cast on the wall of the cave. And the chains holding the prisoners are our physical bodies and our five senses, where we pick up only a very poor representation of that which is more real, the whole realm of forms. And of course, this is also represented in his divided line, which we can go over in another video. But the fascinating thing for us here is that Plato is pointing out that the world of forms, as it were, makes sense of our world in a way that gives meaning to everything else. Unless you are attracted out of the bondage of your five senses into the full light of the sun, which represents for Plato the good, the ultimate form of goodness, that gives nourishment and enlightenment to all the other forms. Unless you perceive that and understand that, you're chained to your five senses, and you are as much a prisoner to them as the prisoners in the allegory of the cave.